Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Week 10 of IRG's Start or Sit podcast. This podcast is all about talking about, for example, last week, Week 9, what players were injured, what kind of injuries do they have, and more importantly, are they going to be able to start or are they going to need to sit on your fantasy football team going into Week 10? Joining me, like every week, we're glad to have him. He's awesome. He does a great job. Dr. Hawkins, how are you?
I'm doing great, Shannon. It's always a pleasure to get on with you every week, and this just keeps getting more fun every week.
Absolutely. Last week I asked you if you were living the dream, and you said absolutely. Just want to check up. Are you still living the dream this week?
Yeah, there's little to look down on right now. We just got to stay positive with everything.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. I like that. I like that. The sun will come up tomorrow. I think I've heard that from somewhere. Here we go. You ready to get going?
Yep, let's go.
Okay, Will Reichard, Minnesota Vikings. I think this is our second or third kicker we've talked about this year. We've seen a lot of injuries in kickers. This guy is a rookie, I believe, out of Alabama. He hasn't missed all season. He had a couple misses last week. Comes out, he's got a strained right quadricep. I believe it's on his kicking leg, too. And I think when I saw him miss, he came up. You could see where he came up during that game. Strained I could say that 10 times, right quadriceps on the kicking leg. I think he's going on a little thing called IR. What do you think?
Yeah, this is probably the worst kind of injury you can get in the kickers. We've had I think in the past a hamstring with somebody that kept him out, and they have to generate such force with that kicking leg. It's kind of like taking a full golf swing, and if you ask a guy like that to try to shorten it and slow it down, it completely messes up their mechanics. And that's why you saw him, he injured it, and then he tried another one I think a little later in the game and looked really bad on kicking it. So these are the kind of things they just have to really shut him down. Can't really be trying to have him work through it. And I think you're right. They were given a 4-week timeline. I think it still may be up in the air of whether he's going on IR. I think they're obviously hopeful because he's been such a good kicker for them as a rookie that maybe he turns the corner in 2 or 3 weeks instead of 4. But he will definitely be out this week. And, the hope is he's a young kid. So I think that he'll have a good chance of, if they treat it the right way, he'll be able to get back and resume his normal duties.
So right now we don't really know. I mean, potentially he could go on IR, which means 4 weeks rest. He could be week to week. Keep an eye on him. But we know at least over the next 1 or 2 weeks, he's probably not going to be your kicker. Is that's fair to say?
Yeah, Shannon. And one thing I just wanted to touch on real quick, which we talk about a lot, we've been seeing how these kickers have been making like routine 50-yarders and 60-yarders. And I actually think we're seeing a little bit more of these sort of quad strain and hamstring strain injuries as a result of that, because I think they're starting to get to that limit of, how much force can you generate through those muscles and do it repeatedly and not at some point, it's sort of pushing the edge of the fairway there. I think that it'd be nice to look at a statistic for the NFL season and see how many of these injuries are happening as we're seeing a higher average distance that they're kicking on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I mean, we've talked about it. I mean, a 58-yarder now is almost like commonplace, right? They run out, they put a 58 yards. That's a huge field goal, and they do it all the time. Now, the kicking leg, like you said, is a pendulum. It's so important. It's not just muscle contraction, but it's the speed of contraction. It's eccentric. It's concentric. It's everything going on mechanically there. And, I mean, I can't imagine coming back. I'd like to know how significant this quad strain is, but that's a big muscle. That's a big muscle and a big muscle involved in kicking. So, again, we're out at least 2, maybe 3 weeks. Keep an eye on. That would be Will Reichard. Going forward, great job. That's really a good point. We have had 2 or 3. Last year, did we have any kicking injuries that we talked about? I know.
I feel like if anything, it was just like getting run into with an ankle or something like that, like flipping on the turf or something like that.
Trying to make a tackle, kicker. No, just kidding. So there you go. Okay, Zack Moss, Cincinnati Bengals. These guys, Bengals are coming back. I think they might have a mid-season rejuvenation. They're 4-5. He's a running back. He is got a neck injury. Neck injury, man. Pretty significant. Don't know exactly what's going on. Do you know any in-depth information on this neck injury that Zack Moss has? Cincinnati Bengals running back. He's going to sit, it looks like, though.
Yeah, there's a bit of speculation going on. They haven't, let it all out very clearly. But when you look at the timeline, they're saying they're going to rest him for 8 weeks and then reassess.
Wow.
And so generally with something like that, obviously you're not looking at like a congenital issue where somebody has a problem with a narrow spinal cord. That's happened sometimes where guy takes a hit, gets some nerve symptoms. They do imaging and then they realize, oh my goodness, this guy's got high risk of injury, because that oftentimes is an end of the career finding. So with 8 weeks, my speculation on this, Shannon, is he may have actually had perhaps a small fracture in one of the cervical vertebrae, but one that doesn't really affect the stability of the spine. But it's one of those things they have to see if it heals after 6 weeks and there's no sequelae of that, then he'll be essentially as good as new once that heals up. So it was a practice injury, so we don't really have any details about how it happened or anything like that. But my guess is he had some type of perhaps a small, like a pars fracture or something like that.
Yeah, interesting. I think I don't want to misquote myself here, but I thought I heard or read somewhere when you're talking about someone who has a genetic predisposition to, spinal canal narrowing or stenosis. I believe one of the Manning boys, the one that did not play football, Cooper, I think that's what they discovered. Am I right, or have you ever heard that, or am I dreaming?
Yep, you're dead on with that.
Yeah.
That is 100%. And he, nowadays there's some guys that'll get second opinions, and there was a linebacker out of UCLA that got drafted a year ago, I think, and he dropped really, really far because of having had that issue, but he kind of shopped around and eventually got clearance to kind of come back and play. He might have been, was he the guy that was at UW maybe for a little bit too?
Yeah, I think you might be, that's right. I think you might be right. I remember reading something about that. I think you're onto something there. For our listeners, obviously, anytime you're talking about the spine, whether it's the cervical, thoracic, or lumbar spine, anatomically, when you look at these areas and then, just the nerve, just the spinal cord and the peripheral nerves and just the sensitivity. Whenever it's in the neck, that is such a small area. If you ever get a chance to look at a skeleton, look at the spinal canal and the skeleton, look at how small, and you got that big spinal cord running through there, and you don't want to get a fracture or compression on that spinal cord. It's very sensitive, and that's when you get paralysis, etc. So this is on a very precautionary side, most likely. It's a fracture, and they're just saying, hey, it's going to take 8 weeks to heal.
Yeah, exactly. And then, if they came back at 8 weeks and did imaging and saw that it wasn't healing or perhaps there was some instability associated with it, then potentially they would talk about some type of stabilization procedure. And then you'd really have to worry about his long-term ability. But it sounds like they're erring on the side of caution. He's a young guy. He set all the records at University of Utah. And so he's hopefully has a big career in front of him. So I think they're just erring on the side of watching it for now.
Good stuff. Thank you. CeeDee Lamb, Dallas Cowboys 3-5. They had a loss to the Falcons last week. Their star receiver, here we go, AC joint separation. I believe this happened during the game, and I know he was hit. And I think they made some kind of comment. Someone ran by him and just brushed up against his shoulder, and he kind of buckled. I think this was after it was hit, but he has an AC joint separation. We've talked about AC joint separations. Let's review it. He's a watch, I think. Got to keep an eye on this guy. CeeDee Lamb.
I think the biggest thing to take into account here, we've talked about how it's a painful injury. We've talked about how that AC joint takes the stress from essentially your shoulder and your arm to the rest of the skeleton. I think in this situation with the Cowboys and, their unique poor showing at this time of the year, I see him having a very, limited ability to play this week. I think if he's having any pain or any real issues, I wouldn't be surprised if he warms up and doesn't play. So I would err on the side of saying he's a sit this week, even though it sounds like a relatively minor AC sprain.
Yeah. Guess who they play this weekend?
The Eagles.
Yeah. My bucket list is to wear a Cowboys jersey in the Philadelphia Eagles Stadium on a Sunday and see if I come out of Philly alive.
That's like saying you want to spend one night in Reichard's prison in New York. I don't think that's a good choice.
Okay, yeah, maybe you should I should do some consulting with you. CeeDee Lamb, keep an eye on him. You're kind of thinking he is sitting this week because that's very painful. the AC joint separation. Yeah, and keep an eye on that because it is the Eagles. It is the Eagles. Fly, baby, fly. Is that what they do out there? I mean,
yep.
Yeah, okay.
You gotta get the whole EAGLES.
Next time I'll work on that. Okay, great job. Here we go. Keon Coleman. This guy, I believe he's a rookie. He's on fire. I mean, he's just tearing it up. He's got a wrist problem, and I think he is not really ruled out, but I think they're kind of keeping an eye on this. And he's with the Buffalo Bills. They're 7-2, and they play the Colts, who are 4-5 this weekend. They won over the Dolphins last week. Keon Coleman, wide receiver, Bills, wrist injury. What do you think?
Well, he was a collision injury, so he came a helmet into his hand, kind of forced the wrist into flexion, and so he did get some imaging done. The positives of that, they didn't see any rupture of any of the ligaments in his wrist, which is, I think, obviously what the concern was. You know, you have these sort of small ligaments that attach all the small bones, the 8 small bones that make up the wrist joint itself. And so some of those, if they're completely torn, they're almost always need to be fixed or stabilized. So the expectation based upon the imaging not showing a tear is that he has a sprain. Those ligaments were stretched, just like in every other part of the body. It's a question of, can they protect it with what he needs to do? So in his situation, I think what they'll do in the next couple of days is they'll be, sort of wrapping it up, taping it up, limiting the flexibility of that, and seeing how he can handle catching a ball and protecting it. And again, with these younger players, they have a sort of a quicker bounce back. So I would err on the side. He's been very successful. They're trying to kind of maintain their success as a team moving forward. I think he's going to be a play this week. I think for those who have him on fantasy, there's always the question of, will he be productive? But I think he will be playing.
Okay, Keon Coleman, play Buffalo Bills wide receiver, taking on the Colts at 4-5. He's playing this weekend. Okay, this guy here, boy, tell you what, Dak Prescott. I mean, I saw this game. I was watching this game, and Falcons are on fire. I mean, they're looking good. And he went back to throw. They were talking about his thumb being injured over on the sideline. They were talking about the thumb being swollen. Next thing you know, he goes out, and he throws. And he comes up, you can see him grimace, and he comes up and he has a hamstring strain on his push-off leg, it looked like, on TV. And I don't know what they're going to do with Dak Prescott, but it's probably questionable that he's even going to play for 2 or 3 weeks. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is another situation where their decisions are going to be strongly based upon, their success and where they are right now. Given that, they're really not in contention and they've been losing, and they have a lot invested in him, my guess is that they're going to sit him not just through this week, and probably a chance they'll move him to the IR and just kind of go. They've had success in the past when Cooper Rush came in and played reasonably well and sort of kept them relevant. So, I think it'll be an IR stay for him. So he definitely will not be playing this week. And I'm not a huge Cowboys fan, but you have to feel for the guy.
Yeah.
Like he's always got either a major injury or a significant nick that always sets him back.
Yeah, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but it was recent. Maybe it was last year. He came back last year. I don't know. But remember he had that fracture dislocation. It was on TV, and you could see the ankle just roll up, and, you knew it was, and he had surgery. He was out for almost the whole season. Was that last year or the year before? Do you remember?
Yeah, the year before.
Yeah, so he made it a whole season last year. And he got a big contract just recently in the offseason, if I remember right. But Dak Prescott, if he's on your team, here's the deal, people. He's most likely going to be sitting, and it could be up to 4 weeks on the injured reserve. But definitely this weekend and probably next weekend, he's out. Keep an eye on him. Okay? Does that work for everybody out there? Hopefully so. Drake London. Falcons, I'm kind of looking at them. They're a team. They're coming alive. I like Kirk Cousins, always have. He looks like he's getting more accurate. He looks like he's getting more comfortable, and they're a pretty good team. But one of his receivers is Drake London kid, Atlanta Falcons wide receiver. We haven't talked about this. We got the old hip pointer, and I think he's day-to-day. They're looking at it. Let's talk about a hip pointer anatomically. What is it? What's going on there? Why is it a problem?
Yeah, that's the classic hip pointer is that sort of collision landing, on your side directly on the ground. It can also be a player running into you, but essentially the top part of the femur, the thigh bone, just below the hip joint itself has a bony prominence that sticks out, called the greater trochanter. And where that gets hit, that's, you see players sometimes wearing those hip pads inside their leggings, and that's to kind of directly protect that area, because if it gets hit really hard, you get bruising in that area. There's muscles that overlie that area. Something called your tensor fascia lata runs over top of it. And so essentially you get sort of bleeding and bruising in that area. So it's really uncomfortable, very hard to push off and twist and pivot with it. And any contact in that area can be really, really. Yeah. So I guess the best analogy is it's kind of like the AC joint injury of your hip.
That's great. That's a great analogy. Good job there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
so it's pain limiting,
Yeah.
And so if they need to play, they can shoot it up with, some numbing medicine and play through it, usually without furthering the damage, but with prolonging the symptoms. So, again, I think they've been lucky. They've had a lot of good players. They've got, Daryl Mooney as a rookie who's been on fire for them as a wide receiver. They've got Kyle Pitts who's been playing this this year at the tight end position. So I think they're probably going to err on the side of limiting his touches. He might show up in the game, but I don't think he'll be as productive as he would normally. So I would generally, if you have him as a fantasy player, I would sit him on my team expecting that he's not going to produce. But that being said, I think he might be actually in the game at some point, but maybe just in a limited capacity.
Yeah, good point. Good point. He's pretty impressive. I saw him catch a couple great balls last game, and like I said, the Falcons look really good. Here's another guy that's kind of working on turning the team around. This is number one draft pick last year. The guy's name is Caleb Williams with the Chicago Bears. He's a QB. He's got a left ankle injury on the final play they lost to the Cardinals. Okay. Last week, and he kind of landed wrong. He kind of talked about just felt it tweak, but they're kind of looking at it, and he is kind of a day-to-day thing, but most likely kind of leaning towards. What do you think, Doc?
I think he'll be a play. He's, from all the intents and purposes with how it happened and his positive responses in the media, it's probably a low grade, low, not a high ankle sprain. And one of those situations where they'll tape it up, they'll brace it perhaps a little bit. He may not be quite as mobile, but he'll be playing on it this week. Yeah,
so that's a play. Caleb Williams is a play. They are taking on the Patriots, who are 2-7. And then finally, we're just going back because we want to wrap this up with some positivity today. As we talk about start or sit going into Week 10, we got to give some love to your team, the Eagles. Okay. And I got to give love where love is due. Your running back, Saquon Barkley, came from the Giants, I believe, now with the Eagles. I saw this replay last week. The guy, he's a magician. I don't know what he's doing, but he's running down, he's cutting and stopping, and he does this reverse hurdle. What's going on there, right? Where do you learn that? I mean, tell me, is that just an Eagles thing?
Yeah, that's you got to be born with that instinct. I mean, that you have to know that the guy's coming at you fast. You got to know that you can, basically jump and clear at least 4 to 5 feet directly vertical. And you got to have the flexibility to spread your legs like that too. I mean, there's so many things that go into what he did, but yeah, it was a pretty amazing moment, and he was reportedly having some soreness in his back, but it sounds like that's going to be really nothing significant, and hopefully we'll get to. I mean, he's a special talent. I'm happy for him. I think we've talked about it in prior years, but he's from the Lehigh Valley, where I used to live outside of Pennsylvania, and I knew him when he played in high school. And he's just a great person and a great kid. And, whether he was going to stay with the Giants and be successful, or he did end up now with the Eagles, I wish this guy all the best in the world. He's like the kind of person you want to bring home, meet the family. Yeah. He's a good guy. Yeah, and he's coming off, I mean, I think 2 years ago or something like that. I mean, my timing's off, but he had a significant injury. He's back from an ACL tear. We talked about him before.
He tore
his... he had that combination ACL MCL injury.
That's right.
They waited 6 weeks to do his ACL, let his MCL heal, and so he's really shown that unique ability some of these amazing athletes have, that they can have a significant injury to their body.
I know.
Somebody like him. We think about like Adrian Peterson back in the day. That came back better. Which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing. That, I mean, I don't know if you've ever had a chance. Years ago, I had a chance. I'm sure you have, Doc. But to go down on an NFL football field, I mean, and just watch and observe, and man, the speed. The quickness. It's amazing.
And they're all huge.
I know.
You don't realize till you're in the middle of them.
I know.
How big they all are.
Well, that's what I was saying. Not only are they huge, but they're doing like a 4.340, and they're like 6'5", 245, and that's. Physics. Mass times momentum is. Velocity, right, or whatever it is. I remember those days. Hey, you got a prediction this weekend? Your Eagles versus Cowboys. You got Eagles winning, don't you?
Yeah, I don't think I think the only thing that can hold them up, and all the pundits out there will say the same thing, is Sirianni is their coach. He seems to be their biggest variable. He goes for it when he shouldn't, and then he doesn't go for it when he should. But I think if he can get out of the way of the talent on that team, I think they have a good chance of going pretty far. In the NFC, the Lions look amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's going to be the real hurdle in the NFC. And then if McCaffrey comes back, look out for the 49ers.
Oh, yeah, there's some teams that are coming on.
Yeah.
There you go, folks. Hey, we want to wish everybody good luck this week, coming into Week 10. We want to take an opportunity, and me personally, give Dr. Hawkins a big shout out. Fantastic job. Go Eagles, fly, whatever it is. We'll see everybody next week. Real quick as we wrap up, trivia question for Dr. Hawkins. Dr. Hawkins, where did Saquon Barkley play college ball at?
Penn State University.
There you go. Are you a big fan? I gotta ask you. Big fan of Penn State, the whiteout?
It's a unique experience. I've been there a couple of times, and I one of my close friends, played there and was briefly in the NFL, and
wow.
So it's a really unique experience. Yeah, like being around that. But all those big schools have their great unique experiences to be around them.
It's amazing.
But at Penn State, it's definitely a religion there. It's in the middle of the state. There's not much else around it, and everybody comes from all over the state to go there. So it creates a big buzz.
You think James Franklin, a hot seat? Is he in the Budweiser hot seat right now, losing to Ohio State?
They are incredibly loyal there.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's kind of, I don't know if we've ever talked about my college past, but I went to Georgetown as undergrad, and so the way that in basketball that they held on to John Thompson far beyond when he should have probably moved on. That's kind of the way Penn State is. They kind of hold on to things. They've had generally moderate to good success. They just can't quite get over it, and I think they'd be worried about letting go of a guy who seems to be doing a good job for his players, and then get something that's not as good. So I don't think he's on the hot seat, but nowadays you never know.
Yeah, it's a pressure cooker. Hey, just as we wrap up, a little more trivia, a little kind of aging myself here. You said Georgetown. I believe I saw Patrick Ewing went to Georgetown, correct? Am I right?
Yep.
And Patrick Ewing was in the Final Four in Seattle, Washington, in the old Kingdome back in 84, and I saw him play Houston and Akeem Olajuwon, the Dream Shaker, and it was a really cool game. I'll never forget that. And so Georgetown was a big basketball powerhouse. Maybe we'll have to do a starter sit with basketball. We can talk about that kind of stuff next season, or the season's upon us right now, right? Okay.
Yep.
Dr. Hawkins.
We can always work in any sport.
Yeah, I love it. I enjoy talking to you. I always learn so much. I hope our people out there are learning a little bit in addition to kind of able and to get some accuracy on their roster, on their fantasy football. Here we go. We're going to wrap up. Have a great week. Good luck this weekend. Dr. Hawkins, thanks again.
Thank you, Shannon.